I'm Jade, 28 years old, and this morning should be the happiest day of my life. Standing here in my bridal suite, adjusting the pearl necklace my late grandmother left me, I feel a mixture of joy and sweet anticipation. My sister Emma just arrived 2 hours late, as always, fully expecting to be my maid of honor despite everything she's done. She took everything from me for 28 years, from birthday parties to boyfriends, always the golden child who could do no wrong. But today, on my wedding day, I had planned something she'd never forget. Before I begin my story, I want to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever dealt with family favoritism. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this golden child finally learned what happens when you push someone too far. My story begins long before today, back when I was just 2 years old, and my parents brought home my baby sister Emma. I remember peering into that hospital bassinet, excited to be a big sister, ready to protect and love this tiny human. Emma was born with these stunning blue eyes and natural blonde curls that had the nurses cooing over her before she even left the delivery room. I had inherited our father's dark brown hair and hazel eyes, perfectly normal, perfectly ordinary. The shift in our household was immediate and devastating. Before Emma, I had been daddy's little girl and mommy's helper. I remember sitting on my father's lap while he read me stories, my mother teaching me to bake cookies on Sunday mornings. But once Emma came home, it was like I became invisible overnight. Not gradually, not subtly, but immediately and completely. My 5th birthday still burns in my memory. Mom had promised me a princess party for weeks. I'd picked out my dress, helped make the invitations, even practiced my thank you speech for when people sang happy birthday. The morning of my party, Emma woke up with sniffles. Not a fever, not anything serious, just regular baby sniffles. My parents canceled everything. They said we couldn't risk Emma getting sicker with all those kids around. I ate my birthday cake alone at the kitchen table, while Mom rocked Emma in the living room and Dad ran to the pharmacy for baby medicine she didn't even need. School became my refuge, the one place where my achievements were mine alone. I threw myself into studies, bringing home straight A report cards quarter after quarter. 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, perfect marks across the board. My parents would glance at them during dinner, maybe pat my head absently, then return to whatever Emma was doing. She could stack 3 blocks without them falling, and they'd call grandparents to share the incredible news. Meanwhile, my teacher was recommending me for the gifted program, and they forgot to sign the permission slip 3 times. The piano recital incident in 4th grade broke something inside me. I'd practiced for months, staying after school to use the music room piano because my parents said we couldn't afford one. My piece was Fur Elise, and I could play it with my eyes closed. The night of the recital, I waited backstage in my best dress, the one I'd saved my allowance to buy from the thrift store. Other kids' families filled the auditorium. I kept watching the door. They never came. Emma had tried out for soccer that day, didn't make the team, and they needed to console her. She hated soccer. She only tried out because she knew it was my recital day. Middle school brought new depths to their favoritism. I won the 7th grade science fair with a project on renewable energy that I'd worked on for 3 months. The judges said it was high school level work. My parents showed up 45 minutes late to the award ceremony because Emma needed a ride to the mall to meet her friends. They missed my acceptance speech. They missed the moment when the principal shook my hand. They missed the local newspaper taking my photo. But they made sure Emma got her new lip gloss from the cosmetics store. The laptop incident in 8th grade taught me that Emma's destruction would always be my fault. I had saved for a year doing odd jobs around the neighborhood to buy a used laptop for high school. 2 weeks after I got it, Emma spilled nail polish remover on it during one of her makeover sessions in my room that I never invited her to. The laptop was destroyed. My parents' response: they bought Emma a brand new MacBook because clearly she needed a computer too, and it wasn't fair that only I had one. I got nothing. When I pointed out that she destroyed mine, they said I shouldn't have left it where she could reach it. It was on my desk in my room with the door closed. Prom dress shopping. Junior year of high school should have been a mother-daughter bonding experience. I'd been babysitting the Thompson twins every weekend for 6 months to save for my dream dress. It was burgundy with delicate beading, classic and elegant. I tried it on, and even the store clerk said I looked like a movie star. My mother actually smiled at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. I bought the dress, hung it carefully in my closet, and counted down the days. 2 weeks before prom, Emma decided she wanted to go too, even though she was only a freshman and hadn't been asked. She demanded the exact same dress in the exact same color. My parents made me return mine and give her the money for hers, saying she needed it more since it was her first dance. I wore an old dress of my mother's that was 2 sizes too big and 15 years out of style. The only light in my family darkness was Grandmother Margaret, my father's mother. She saw everything with clear eyes, probably because she lived 2 states away and only visited twice a year. During one visit when I was 16, she pulled me aside and pressed a bank book into my hands. She'd been putting money away for me since I was 10, $25 here, $50 there, every time my parents canceled my plans for Emma's whims. The account had nearly $8,000. She made me promise to use it for college and never tell my parents. That money became my lifeline, my escape plan, my hope for a future where I mattered. High school guidance counselor Ms. Harrison became another unexpected ally. She noticed my excellent grades despite never seeing my parents at school events. When she called them for a meeting about college applications, they didn't show up sending a note that Emma had a cheerleading practice they couldn't miss. Ms. Harrison stayed after school for months helping me apply for scholarships, writing recommendation letters, even driving me to college interviews. She said she'd never seen a student work so hard with so little family support. The pattern of theft and sabotage intensified as we got older. Senior year brought the cruel revelation about my college fund. I'd known my parents had been saving for our education since we were babies, matching amounts in 2 accounts. When acceptance letters started arriving, I got into my dream school with a partial scholarship. I'd need the saved funds for the rest. That's when my parents sat me down and explained that Emma had totaled her car junior year, the BMW they'd bought her for her 16th birthday. They'd used my entire college fund to buy her a replacement because she couldn't be without transportation. Emma didn't even have a job. She just needed it for parties and shopping. The unfairness burned like acid in my chest. I'd been taking the bus for years, saving every penny, wearing the same 3 pairs of jeans until they fell apart. I'd never asked for a car accepted that we couldn't afford insurance for 2 teenage drivers, but Emma crashed her luxury car doing something stupid, and my entire future got sacrificed to replace it. When I pointed out the injustice, my mother actually said I was being selfish, that family means sacrifice, and I should be happy my sister was safe. So I worked 3 jobs my senior year. Morning shift at the coffee shop before school tutoring, after-school weekend shifts at the grocery store. My grades never slipped, though I was exhausted constantly. Emma, meanwhile, spent her senior year partying, skipping class, barely graduating with a 2.1 GPA. My parents threw her a massive graduation party with catered food and a DJ. For my graduation, despite being valedictorian, they ordered pizza and said celebrations weren't necessary since I was abandoning the family for college anyway. College became my sanctuary, though my parents tried to ruin that too. I'd earned a full scholarship to the state university, covering tuition, books, and dormitory housing. The day I left, my mother cried, not because she'd miss me, but because who would help with Emma's homework now? My father accused me of thinking I was better than them. Emma smirked from the doorway, already eyeing my room for expansion of her wardrobe space. My pre-med track success only widened the family divide. Every achievement I shared was met with accusations of showing off or making Emma feel bad about herself. When I made Dean's List first semester, my mother's response was to tell me Emma was struggling at community college and I should come home weekends to tutor her. When I joined the Medical Honor Society, my father said I was becoming elitist. When I got selected for a prestigious summer research program, they didn't even respond to my text. But Emma's every minor accomplishment warranted family-wide celebration. She passed a remedial math class Facebook announcement with hundreds of likes from relatives. She got a part-time job at the mall that she quit after 2 weeks family dinner at the expensive steakhouse. She decided to try community college for the 3rd time. My parents bought her a new laptop and designer backpack. The Marcus situation junior year nearly broke me entirely. I met him in organic chemistry lab, and for the first time in my life, someone chose me first. Marcus was brilliant, funny kind, and somehow thought I was special. We studied together, went to medical seminars, planned our futures in medicine. He made me laugh, really laugh, something I hadn't done in years. For 8 months, I was genuinely happy. Thanksgiving break, I made the mistake of bringing him home. I wanted to show my parents I was thriving, that someone valuable saw value in me. The second Marcus walked through the door, I saw Emma's predatory assessment. She'd gained weight, dropped out of community college again, and was living at home with no job and no prospects. But she still had those blue eyes and that golden hair, and more importantly, she had our parents' unwavering support. The campaign started immediately. Emma suddenly developed an interest in medicine, asking Marcus endless questions while pressing against his arm. She'd never shown any interest in science before, failed high school biology twice. My parents encouraged her attention, saying it was wonderful that Emma was finally finding direction, and wasn't Marcus so patient to explain things to her. They seated her next to him at dinner, suggested he help her with her community college applications, even asked him to drive her to the mall because her car was in the shop. I watched it happening like a slow-motion car crash. Every time I tried to redirect, my parents accused me of being jealous and possessive. My mother pulled me aside and said I needed to learn to share, that not everything was about me. Share. My boyfriend. Like he was a toy or a sweater. My father said Marcus seemed to really connect with Emma and wasn't that nice for everyone. Christmas break was the final straw. My parents threw their annual holiday party, and I came home from my hospital volunteer shift to find Emma and Marcus kissing under the mistletoe in full view of every relative we had. She was wearing my dress, the one I'd bought specifically for the party, the only nice thing I owned. Marcus at least had the decency to look guilty. Emma just smiled and said mistletoe was tradition. The breakup was inevitable. Marcus tried to explain, said Emma had been texting him constantly, that my parents had given her his number for emergencies. He said he was confused, that my family dynamics were toxic, that he couldn't handle the drama. He wasn't wrong, but it didn't hurt any less. Emma dated him for exactly 3 weeks, just long enough to post pictures on social media and make sure everyone knew she'd won, then dumped him for someone with a nicer car. My parents' reaction. They said I should have paid more attention to Marcus, that men need to feel appreciated, that Emma was just being friendly, and I took it the wrong way. My mother actually suggested I apologize to Emma for making such a scene at the Christmas party. The scene where I found them kissing. The scene where I said nothing and just walked upstairs to pack my things and leave. That's when I started therapy with Dr. Peterson at the campus counseling center. She introduced me to terms I'd never heard before, but that explained my entire life. Golden child and scapegoat, narcissistic family dynamics, emotional neglect, gaslighting. For the first time, someone validated that what I experienced wasn't normal sibling rivalry or typical family dysfunction. It was systematic emotional abuse. Medical school applications brought new levels of sabotage. I studied for the MCAT for 6 months, scoring in the 97th percentile. The day I got accepted to Johns Hopkins, Emma announced she was engaged. She'd been dating some guy named Brad for 3 weeks. There was no ring, no proposal story, just her declaration that she was getting married. The family group chat exploded with congratulations for Emma, while my medical school acceptance went unacknowledged. When I matched for my residency at one of the best teaching hospitals in the country, Emma claimed she was pregnant. She wasn't. She just needed the attention redirected from my achievement. The fake pregnancy lasted exactly as long as it took for my residency news to become old. Then she had a convenient miscarriage that required weeks of family support and sympathy. I was labeled heartless for continuing my residency orientation instead of coming home to comfort her about a pregnancy that never existed. Everything changed when I met Ryan. It was 2 years into my residency, during one of those chaotic nights in the ER that make you question every life choice. A multi-vehicle accident had just come in, and we were drowning in critical patients. Ryan had just transferred from Boston as our new pediatric surgeon, and this was his first night shift. I was managing 3 trauma bays when I heard him calling for assistance with a 6-year-old with internal bleeding. We worked together for 3 straight hours on that little girl, our hands moving in perfect synchronization, communicating without words. He never questioned my suggestions, never talked down to me, despite being an attending while I was still a resident. When we finally stabilized her and got her to surgery, he looked at me with these warm brown eyes and said, I was the best resident he'd worked with. Me. The best. Coffee happened naturally after that. First, it was just debriefing after difficult cases in the hospital cafeteria at 3 a.m. Then it became lunch when our schedules aligned. Then dinner at the Thai place near the hospital that stayed open late. Ryan listened to my medical theories, laughed at my terrible jokes, and never once made me feel like I needed to shrink myself to make room for someone else's ego. 3 months passed before he asked about my family. We were sharing Chinese takeout in the on-call room, and he mentioned his parents were coming to visit. Did I want to join them for dinner? The question was so casual, so normal, and I completely shut down. He noticed, immediately apologized for presuming, but I could see the concern in his eyes. That's when I gave him the abbreviated version, just that my family and I weren't close, that my sister and I had a complicated relationship. Ryan never pushed, but he paid attention. He noticed I never mentioned weekend family calls or holiday plans. He saw how I tensed up when other residents talked about their parents' pride in their medical careers. When my birthday came and went without a single card or call from home, he organized a surprise celebration with the entire surgical department. It was the first birthday party actually meant for me since I was 4 years old. Meeting his family changed my entire understanding of what family could be. Robert and Patricia Anderson welcomed me like I'd always belonged there. His mother hugged me within 5 minutes of meeting me, a real hug, not the performative air kisses my mother specialized in. His father immediately started asking about my research, genuinely interested in my work on pediatric trauma protocols. His sister Claire flew in from Seattle just to meet me, saying Ryan had never sounded so happy. They included me seamlessly in their traditions. Sunday dinners where everyone actually showed up. Holiday celebrations where gifts were thoughtful, not competitive. Family game nights where losing didn't result in silent treatment. Patricia taught me her secret chocolate cake recipe, the one she'd only shared with Claire before. Robert started introducing me as his future daughter-in-law before Ryan even proposed. Claire texted me daily, sharing memes and asking for medical advice for her kids' various scraped knees and runny noses. For my next birthday, 6 months into dating Ryan, I made the mistake of trying again with my own family. I invited them to a small dinner, just them and Ryan's family, hoping the presence of others would enforce some civility. My parents arrived an hour late because Emma needed emotional support. She'd broken up with her latest boyfriend, the 5th one that year. They spent the entire dinner comforting Emma about her heartbreak, while Patricia had organized a beautiful celebration for me. Robert made a toast to my recent publication in a medical journal, while my father asked if I could loan Emma money for rent. The contrast was so stark that Ryan finally understood the full picture. That night, he held me while I cried for the family I never had and never would have. He promised that his family would be mine, now that I'd never spend another holiday alone or have another achievement dismissed. Claire started calling me sister. Patricia began planning weekly lunches, just us two. Robert offered to walk me down the aisle whenever I got married, joking that he needed practice for Claire's eventual wedding. The proposal came 18 months after we met on the anniversary of saving that little girl together. Ryan reserved the rooftop garden at the hospital, where we had our first real conversation. He'd strung lights everywhere, recruited the entire surgical team to help set up, even had the Thai restaurant cater our favorite dishes. When he got down on one knee, he pulled out not just his ring, but my grandmother's ring, the one she'd left me when she passed during my final year of medical school. He'd contacted the estate lawyer to get it, knowing how much she meant to me. His proposal speech wasn't about romance and fairy tales. It was about partnership and choosing each other every day. He talked about how I made him better at his job, how I challenged him intellectually, how my strength in the face of my family's treatment inspired him. He promised to always see me, really see me, never through me or around me to someone else. He promised that in our family, everyone would matter equally. When he opened the ring box, the entire hospital staff was watching from the windows, and they erupted in cheers when I said yes. The engagement announcement triggered a family war unlike anything before. Ryan and I decided to tell my parents in person, hoping that face-to-face conversation would yield better results than a phone call. We drove 3 hours to their house on my rare weekend off, bringing flowers for my mother and a bottle of my father's favorite whiskey. I'd even asked Emma to be there, trying to include her from the start to avoid later drama. We barely got the words engagement out before Emma started screaming. She was engaged too, she announced had been for weeks, just waiting for the right moment to tell everyone. There was no ring on her finger, no boyfriend in sight, but my parents immediately pivoted to congratulating Emma on her wonderful news. When Ryan pointedly asked about her fiancé's name, she said he was private, that we'd meet him soon, that they were planning a spring wedding. My mother's first words about my actual engagement were to suggest a double wedding. Think of the savings, she said. Emma shouldn't have to wait just because I'd gotten engaged first. When I firmly declined explaining Ryan and I had already started planning our own celebration, my mother actually started crying. She accused me of trying to overshadow Emma's happiness, of always needing to be the center of attention. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. The next months brought guerrilla warfare disguised as wedding planning. Every vendor I contacted somehow received a call from Emma asking about their availability for her wedding on the same date. She showed up at my dress appointments uninvited, trying on white gowns and telling the consultants we were shopping together. When I found my perfect dress, a simple but elegant design that made me feel like myself, but elevated, Emma immediately demanded our parents buy her the exact same one. I'd learned my lesson from prom. I purchased my dress immediately and had it shipped to Ryan's parents' house. I told Emma and my parents I was still deciding, let them think they'd won when Emma bought the dress. She posted pictures all over social media calling herself the prettier bride, not realizing she'd bought a dress I'd never wear. My actual dress remained safe at Patricia's house, protected from Emma's machinations. Claire stepped into the role of maid of honor with fierce protectiveness. She ran interference at every turn, creating vendor passwords Emma couldn't crack, organizing secret planning sessions at her hotel, when she visited, even hiring security for the venue, after Emma called pretending to be me and tried to cancel the booking. Claire said she'd never understood bridezillas until she realized they were usually defending themselves against family members like Emma. The bridesmaid situation nearly ended my relationship with my parents entirely. Emma assumed she'd be maid of honor despite never once acting like a sister to me. When she found out about Claire, she rallied my parents into a united front. They threatened not to attend if Emma wasn't in the wedding party at all. My father said I was being vindictive. My mother said I was jealous of Emma's beauty and trying to exclude her from photos. Ryan wanted to ban them all, but I made one last attempt at compromise. Emma could be a bridesmaid, one of 6, with no special responsibilities or recognition. She'd wear what everyone else wore, walk when assigned, stand where placed. The second she agreed, she created a secret group chat with the other bridesmaids, excluded me, and started trying to reorganize everything from dress colors to processional order. Claire shut it down immediately, but the damage to relationships with my cousins who'd been in the chat was done. The vendor theft attempts became almost comical in their desperation. Emma contacted my florist claiming I'd died and she was taking over the wedding. She told the caterer I'd become vegan and needed to change the entire menu. She informed the DJ that the playlist should focus on her favorite songs since she was performing a special dance. Each vendor called me confused, and eventually I had to provide them all with a photo of Emma and explicit instructions to ignore any communication from her. 3 weeks before the wedding, Emma's fake pregnancy became real. Or at least she claimed it was real this time. The timing was so suspicious, announced at my bridal shower in front of all the guests, that even my aunts exchanged skeptical glances. She demanded the wedding be postponed because she couldn't fit in her bridesmaid dress if she was showing. When I refused, she sobbed about how I was forcing a pregnant woman into uncomfortable clothing, how I clearly didn't care about my future niece or nephew. The final straw came when I discovered she'd been calling vendors the week before the wedding trying to cancel everything. Not change or modify, but completely cancel. The venue coordinator called me in tears, saying a woman claiming to be me had screamed at her for 20 minutes about canceling the wedding because the groom had cheated. The florist had received a similar call. The caterer had been told I was in the hospital with food poisoning and the wedding was off. That's when I started planning my revenge. Not something violent or illegal, just truth. Pure, documented, undeniable truth. I spent 3 days compiling everything. Every photo from every ruined birthday, every screenshot of Emma's lies on social media, every family video that showed the blatant favoritism. Ryan helped me edit it into a presentation complete with timestamps and captions. We included the security footage from the bridal shop of Emma trying on my actual dress choice after I'd said no. We had recordings from vendors about her cancellation attempts. But the crown jewel was audio from Emma herself. At the bachelorette party Claire threw for me, Emma had shown up uninvited and drunk. While Claire kept her away from me, Ryan's cousin Lisa had the presence of mind to record Emma's rambling confession to another bridesmaid. She admitted she was never engaged, never pregnant any of the times she'd claimed had deliberately ruined my birthdays and relationships, and was planning to announce another fake pregnancy at the wedding reception. She laughed about how easy it was to manipulate our parents, how they'd believe anything if she cried enough. My wedding day dawned perfect and clear, one of those crisp autumn mornings that makes everything look like a painting. I woke up in the bridal suite surrounded by people who actually loved me. Claire, Patricia, Ryan's cousins, my friends from medical school, all there to celebrate with me, not because of obligation, but genuine joy. The hair and makeup team arrived early and we sipped champagne while getting ready, laughing at Claire's stories about Ryan as an awkward teenager. Emma arrived 2 hours late, as I'd known she would. She swept in complaining about traffic, though we all knew she lived 15 minutes away. Her dress was wrinkled, her hair unstyled because she'd refused the appointment I'd booked for her, insisting she'd do her own to look better than everyone else. She immediately started criticizing everything from the flower arrangements to the color of lipstick the makeup artist had chosen for me. When she saw herself in the bridesmaid dress next to the others, all perfectly styled and glowing, her face fell. She'd gained weight from her supposed pregnancy, and the dress that fit her at the last fitting now pulled uncomfortably. She demanded alterations on the spot, screamed at the seamstress I'd hired for last-minute emergencies, and threatened to walk out if she didn't get a better dress. Claire calmly informed her that would be fine. We'd simply remove her from the processional, and her absence would be noted to all the guests. The photographer captured every moment of Emma's tantrum while I remained serene, knowing what was coming. She tried to insist on individual photos with Ryan, claiming future aunt privileges for her baby. She demanded to be in the first look photos, saying sibling bonds were more important than wedding traditions. When we did the bridesmaid photos, she kept stepping forward, trying to position herself as maid of honor, despite Claire clearly holding the bouquet that designated the role. As we lined up for the processional, Emma made one last play. She announced loudly that she felt faint, that the pregnancy was making her dizzy, that maybe she should sit down. My mother immediately rushed to her side, suggesting Emma walk first so she could sit sooner, or maybe skip walking entirely and just appear at the altar. Patricia stepped in, her voice steel under velvet, and said anyone not able to fulfill their role should indeed sit with the guests. Emma miraculously recovered. The ceremony itself was beautiful until the pastor reached the part about objections. We'd asked him to skip it, but Emma had apparently cornered him before the service and insisted it was tradition. When he reluctantly asked if anyone objected, Emma stood up. She claimed she'd been with Ryan first, that he'd chosen the wrong sister, that this was all a misunderstanding. The gasps from the guests were audible. Ryan's face went from shocked to furious in seconds. Ryan handled it perfectly. He turned to the congregation and clearly stated he'd never met Emma before I introduced them, had never been alone with her, and certainly had never been romantically involved with her. He asked her to provide a single piece of evidence, a photo, a text, anything to support her claim. She stammered about private moments, about keeping things secret, but the damage was done. The pastor continued the ceremony while Emma slumped in her bridesmaid position, her grand moment ruined by simple truth. The reception started beautifully. Ryan and I entered to thunderous applause, shared our first dance to our song, the one playing in the cafeteria during our first real conversation. Then Emma emerged for cocktail hour in a different dress, white and elaborate, looking more bridal than my actual gown. She told anyone who'd listen that she was renewing her vows later, though several guests pointed out she'd need to be married first to renew anything. Dinner service began smoothly until Emma grabbed a microphone during the salad course. She announced she had something special to share, something that would make this day even more memorable. I caught Ryan's eye and nodded to the DJ. The screens around the room, initially meant for sharing photos of Ryan and me throughout the night, flickered to life. The presentation I'd prepared began to play. The first slide showed every birthday Emma had ruined with dates and photos. My 5th birthday with me alone at the kitchen table. My 10th with Emma opening my presents while I watched. my 16th with her wearing the dress I'd saved for while I stayed home. The progression was undeniable year after year of systematic destruction. Guests started murmuring, recognizing some events they'd attended, or rather hadn't attended because they'd been canceled. Next came the achievement slide split screen showing my accomplishments versus the family reaction. My science fair win with timestamps showing my parents arriving after the ceremony ended. My valedictorian speech with an empty reserved family section. My medical school acceptance with the family group chat showing no responses for 3 days, while Emma's community college enrollment got 30 messages of congratulations. The contrast was stark and undeniable. Then came Emma's social media lies. Screenshots of her engagement announcements with different men's names over the years. Her pregnancy announcements that mysteriously disappeared weeks later. Posts claiming she was in medical school, law school, getting her PhD, all while she was unemployed and living at home. Each lie time-stamped, organized, chronologically impossible to dispute. The vendor harassment played next. Security footage from the bridal shop. Recorded phone calls from the caterer, florist, and venue coordinator about cancellation attempts. Email screenshots where Emma pretended to be me. The wedding coordinator's tearful voicemail about being screamed at by someone claiming the wedding was off. The evidence was overwhelming and damning. Finally, the audio from the bachelorette party. Emma's drunk voice filled the reception hall, slurring through her confessions, admitting she was never pregnant, laughing about stealing Marcus just to prove she could, bragging about making up crises during every important moment of my life, describing her plan to announce a pregnancy during my reception for attention. Her own words, her own voice, her own condemnation. The reception hall was silent except for Emma's recorded voice echoing through the speakers. Every guest heard her say she'd never been pregnant, but found it hilarious how our parents believed her every time. They heard her call me pathetic for still trying to have a relationship with our family. They heard her admit she'd been calling vendors all week trying to ruin the wedding because she couldn't stand me having something she didn't. The aftermath was immediate and explosive. Emma's scream could probably be heard 3 blocks away. She lunged for the laptop controlling the presentation, but Ryan's groomsmen formed a wall. She spun toward me, her face contorted with rage, screaming that I'd ruined everything, that I was jealous that I'd edited the recordings. But everyone had seen the metadata, the timestamps, the evidence that couldn't be faked. My parents sat frozen at their table, their faces cycling through emotions like a slot machine. Shock, disbelief, anger, embarrassment, and finally, for the first time in 26 years, shame. My mother's mouth opened and closed without sound. My father had gone pale, his hands shaking as he reached for his water glass. They were seeing, really seeing what they'd enabled for decades. Extended family members started approaching our head table. Aunts who'd attended those ruined birthdays apologizing for not speaking up. Uncles admitting they'd noticed the favoritism, but thought it wasn't their place to interfere. Cousins confessing they'd stopped visiting because watching my treatment made them uncomfortable. The validation I'd never thought I'd receive came flooding in from every direction. Emma tried one last manipulation, grabbing the microphone to announce she was pregnant for real this time, that the stress I'd caused could harm her baby. But she'd cried wolf too many times. Even my parents, her eternal defenders, looked skeptical. When she couldn't produce any proof, no ultrasound photo, no pregnancy test, no doctor's confirmation, the few people still listening turned away. She stood alone in the middle of the dance floor, white dress, and all completely invisible for the first time in her life. Ryan took the microphone next for his groom's speech. He talked about strength and resilience, about choosing to build your own family when the one you're born into fails you. He honored my grandmother Margaret, the only family member who'd truly seen me. He thanked his parents for showing me what real family looked like. He praised Claire for being the sister I'd deserved all along. Not once did he mention Emma or my parents directly, but everyone understood the message. Claire followed with the maid of honor speech, talking about how she'd gained a sister through Ryan. She shared stories of our shopping trips, our late-night medical discussion texts, our inside jokes that drove Ryan crazy. She talked about real sisterhood, the kind based on mutual respect and genuine affection, not blood or obligation. She ended by saying family isn't about DNA, it's about who shows up, who celebrates your victories and supports you through defeats. Robert stood to give the father of the bride speech my own father should have given. He talked about watching me bloom in their family, about the joy I brought to their lives, about how proud he was to walk me down the aisle, since my father had chosen to arrive late and miss that honor too. Patricia added how she'd always wanted another daughter and felt like she'd won the lottery with me. The love from Ryan's family was so genuine, so overwhelming that I started crying real tears of joy. The rest of the reception proceeded like a real celebration instead of the tense performance it might have been. Emma left at some point no one noticed exactly when. She just disappeared, her white dress and all her demands forgotten. My parents stayed but sat silent at their table, ignored by most guests who'd finally understood the dynamics they'd been blind to for years. They left before the cake cutting without saying goodbye. But I was surrounded by love. Real love. Ryan's family, our friends from the hospital, my mentors who'd supported me when my family wouldn't. The dance floor stayed packed until midnight. The photographer captured genuine smiles, real laughter, authentic moments of joy. Claire and I did a sister dance to replace the father-daughter dance I'd never have. Ryan's parents joined us, turning it into a family dance that meant more than any traditional moment could have. The immediate aftermath of the wedding was both painful and liberating. Emma blocked me on everything within hours of leaving the reception, though considering our relationship it felt more like a gift than a punishment. She also blocked Ryan, Claire, and anyone else who'd witnessed her humiliation. For someone who'd spent her entire life demanding attention, she suddenly wanted to disappear entirely. My parents left a voicemail the next morning while Ryan and I were at the airport heading to our honeymoon. My mother's voice was small, broken, in a way I'd never heard before. She apologized, said they needed time to process everything, that they'd had no idea things were so unbalanced. My father's voice in the background sounded hollow. They said they loved me, but the words felt empty after 28 years of showing otherwise. Ryan's parents had upgraded our honeymoon as a wedding gift. Instead of a week in Hawaii, we spent 2 weeks in Bali, completely disconnected from the drama back home. For the first time in my life, I didn't check my phone obsessively for family messages. There were none to receive anyway. I didn't worry about what crisis Emma might manufacture. I didn't wonder if my achievements were being acknowledged. I just existed peacefully with someone who chose me first every single time. Those 2 weeks taught me what life felt like without the constant weight of seeking approval from people incapable of giving it. Ryan and I slept late, ate breakfast on our villa's balcony overlooking rice paddies, talked about our future without factoring in my family's dysfunction. We planned where we'd buy a house, how many kids we wanted, what we'd teach them about family. Ryan suggested we create a chosen family list, people who'd be our children's grandparents and aunts and uncles based on love, not genetics. The island gave me perspective I'd never had before. Walking through temples, talking to locals about their family structures, watching multi-generational families working together in harmony, I realized how abnormal my experience had been. The tour guide talked about balance in all things, how favoritism disrupts entire family systems, how one child's elevation requires another's suppression. It wasn't profound or new information, but hearing it from a stranger half a world away made it sink in differently. 6 months after the wedding, my parents reached out again with a real letter, not a text or email. They'd been in therapy both individually and together, trying to understand how they'd become the kind of parents who'd so thoroughly failed one child while enabling another's destruction. My mother admitted she'd projected onto Emma seeing her beauty as a second chance at the youth she felt she'd wasted. My father acknowledged he'd been conflict avoidant, going along with my mother's favoritism rather than fighting for fairness. They asked for a chance to rebuild, to start over, to learn who I was as an adult, without Emma's shadow affecting their view. I agreed to meet them for coffee-neutral territory with Ryan by my side. The conversation was awkward, stilted, full of long silences and careful words. But for the first time, they asked about my work, my research, my life without immediately pivoting to Emma. They looked at my wedding album Claire had made, seeing all the moments they'd missed by sitting in shameful silence at their table. Emma, we learned, was living with them again after being evicted from her apartment for non-payment. The fake pregnancy had been real this time, but the father wanted nothing to do with her after learning about her history of lies. She was 7 months along working part-time at a department store, refusing therapy, and blaming me for ruining her life. My parents were supporting her financially, but had established boundaries for the first time, requiring her to contribute to household expenses and attend prenatal appointments. A full year after the wedding, I was pregnant with our first child. Ryan and I had waited wanting to establish our own family rhythms before adding to them. When we announced it at Sunday dinner with Ryan's family, the joy was pure and uncomplicated. Patricia started knitting immediately. Robert began planning college funds. Claire launched into aunt mode, buying enough baby clothes for triplets. I told my parents separately, carefully testing whether they could celebrate my joy without diminishing it. They cried, but it was different from my mother's manipulative tears of the past. These seemed genuine, tinged with regret for all the moments they'd missed before. They asked to be involved to be better grandparents than they'd been parents. I agreed to consider it with boundaries and conditions and the understanding that Ryan's parents would be the primary grandparents. Emma had given birth by then to a daughter she named after herself, because of course she did. My parents sent photos, but I felt nothing looking at this baby who shared my DNA. Maybe that would change someday, maybe not. I was building my own family, choosing my own people, creating my own traditions. Emma's child was innocent in all this, but I wouldn't sacrifice my own child's well-being to maintain a toxic connection. The final lesson came during my own daughter's birth. The delivery was complicated, 23 hours of labor ending in an emergency cesarean. Ryan never left my side. Claire flew in from Seattle. Patricia and Robert paced the waiting room. My parents asked to come, and I agreed, curious whether they'd show up for me when it truly mattered. They arrived within an hour and stayed the entire time. When Sarah finally arrived, healthy and perfect, despite the dramatic entrance, my parents met her with genuine tears and careful hands. They didn't compare her to Emma's daughter. They didn't make it about them. They just looked at this tiny person who was part of me and seemed to finally understand what they'd missed by looking through me for so many years. Living well truly became the best revenge, though revenge stopped being the point. I had everything Emma had tried to steal or destroy. A loving marriage to a man who valued me. A career I'd built despite every obstacle. A real family who showed up for the small moments and the big ones. Friends who knew my worth. A daughter who'd grow up knowing she was enough exactly as she was, never needing to compete for love or attention. Emma eventually moved 3 states away, claiming she needed a fresh start where no one knew her history. She posts on social media occasionally heavily filtered photos and vague inspirational quotes about rising above negativity. She's never acknowledged what happened at the wedding, never apologized, never shown any growth or self-awareness. But she also never contacts me, and that silence is worth more than any apology she could offer. My relationship with my parents remains complicated but improving. They come to Sarah's birthday parties but don't plan them. They visit for holidays but don't stay long. They're learning to be parents to me at 31, and I'm learning to let them try without expecting them to succeed. It's not the relationship I wanted as a child, but it's more than I thought I'd have as an adult. The most profound change is in me. I don't seek approval anymore from people incapable of giving it. I don't shrink myself to make room for someone else's ego. I don't accept less than I deserve in any relationship. The therapy continues, probably will for years, unpacking decades of conditioning. But each day gets easier, each boundary gets stronger, each joy feels more deserved. Sarah is 3 now, with her father's warm brown eyes and my determination. She's never met Emma, might never meet her. She has one set of grandparents who adore her completely, and another set learning how to love without conditions. She has Aunt Claire who flies in monthly just to see her. She has parents who chose each other and choose her every single day. She'll never know what it feels like to be second best in her own family. I think about my grandmother Margaret, often wish she'd lived to see how her secret bank account and quiet support saved me. That money got me through college, but her belief in my worth got me through life. I named Sarah's middle name after her, Margaret, a reminder that sometimes one person seeing you clearly is enough to survive being invisible to everyone else. The wedding video sits in a box in our closet, the presentation included. Not because I want to relive that drama, but as evidence that it really happened. That I really stood up for myself. That I really exposed the truth. That I really won my freedom. Sometimes on hard days when the old wounds ache, I remember standing in that reception hall surrounded by people who chose to celebrate me, finally visible, finally valued, finally free. The revenge wasn't really about hurting Emma or exposing my parents. It was about refusing to let them rewrite history one more time. It was about making the truth undeniable. It was about choosing myself after 28 years of being told I didn't matter. The wedding was just the beginning. The real revenge is the life I built after the family I chose, the love I accept, the joy I don't apologize for. Emma took my birthdays, my boyfriends, my parents' love. But she couldn't take my future, and that's the sweetest revenge of all. Looking back now, I realize the pattern was set before I could even form memories. Every family video from my childhood shows it clearly. Me in the background, Emma in the spotlight. Me being told to share, Emma being given everything. Me achieving quietly, Emma failing loudly and getting rewarded for it. The videos my parents thought were precious memories were actually evidence of systematic emotional neglect. The presentation at my wedding just made it impossible to ignore. But here's what I've learned about families like mine. The golden child suffers too in different ways. Emma never learned resilience because she never faced consequences. She never developed real skills because she never had to work for anything. She never formed genuine relationships because she only knew transaction and manipulation. At 30 years old, she's alone, unemployed, a single mother dependent on aging parents who are finally seeing the monster they created. The pedestal they put her on became a prison she can't escape. Meanwhile, the scapegoat learns to survive, to thrive, despite everything, to build something from nothing. Every obstacle becomes strength. Every rejection teaches self-reliance. Every moment of invisibility develops inner worth that doesn't depend on external validation. It's a brutal education, but it creates adults who know their own value because they had to discover it alone. I wouldn't wish my childhood on anyone, but I wouldn't trade the person it made me for Emma's empty victories. So when people ask if I regret the wedding presentation, if I think I went too far, if I should have handled it privately, I tell them this. Privacy protects abusers. Silence enables dysfunction. Sometimes the only way to stop a pattern is to expose it so completely that denial becomes impossible. My parents needed to see what they'd done laid out in undeniable timeline. Extended family needed to understand why I'd been distant. Emma needed to face consequences for the first time in her life. And I needed to stop pretending our family dynamic was normal sibling rivalry. I needed to stop minimizing my pain to keep the peace. I needed to stop accepting crumbs while Emma got the whole cake. I needed to stop being grateful for basic human decency while she got worship for breathing. I needed to stop hiding my successes to avoid her tantrums. I needed to stop being the bigger person, the mature one, the understanding one. I needed to be seen, to be heard, to matter. The presentation at my wedding wasn't cruel. It was honest. It wasn't revenge. It was truth. It wasn't about hurting them. It was about healing me. And it worked. Not perfectly, not completely, not without continued effort and therapy and boundaries. But it shifted something fundamental in our family dynamic that 28 years of private conversations never could have achieved. Sometimes you have to burn the whole thing down to build something better from the ashes. If you've made it this far in my story, thank you for listening. If you've experienced something similar with your own family, I want you to know that you're not crazy, you're not overreacting, and you're not alone. The golden child and scapegoat dynamic is more common than people realize, and it leaves lasting scars on everyone involved. But those scars don't have to define your future. So I have to ask, have any of you dealt with similar family dynamics? How did you break free from the role you were assigned? Drop your stories in the comments below, because sharing these experiences helps all of us feel less alone. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family dysfunction and building the life you deserve. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they matter, that their pain is valid, that choosing themselves isn't selfish. Thank you for letting me share the story of how I finally stopped being invisible in my own family. Remember, you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, even if that someone is family. Especially if that someone is family. You deserve to be celebrated, not just tolerated. You deserve to be seen, not looked through. You deserve love that doesn't require you to shrink. And sometimes the best revenge really is living a life so beautiful that the people who hurt you become irrelevant to your joy. Until next time, remember that chosen family is just as real as biological family boundaries are not cruel, and your worth has nothing to do with someone else's inability to see it. Take care of yourselves, protect your peace, and never apologize for refusing to be anyone's second choice.